All right, so of course it's always tough being the first session after a break, but we'll get some folks heading back from the expo hall, and welcome to the folks on the stream in the final stretch for day 2 of Authenticate. So woohoo, just reminding folks that we have our passwordless party starting at like 6-ish over on Legends Lawn. So we're going to be talking about now social authentication at Pinterest. So this is going to be a really interesting talk. We have Yukish Chen here. He's the software engineer, identity, privacy, and compliance at Pinterest. So, you know, we've been talking a lot about passkeys. We just had a session about SMS OTPs, push notification. We have not talked about social login at all yet during this conference. So I'm really excited for this session. So please help us welcome Yukish Chen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. I will be talking about the ins and outs of social authentication at Pinterest. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Yukish Chen. I'm a software engineer at Pinterest working on identity, privacy, and compliance. This picture here is one photo I took at Pinterest office in San Francisco. It's a pushpin in our cafe area. I like it as it captures some of the spirits of Pinterest. Pinterest is a place where people come to find inspirations to create a life that they love. Today might be a good time, if you haven't yet, to find some ideas for your Halloween decorations, costumes, or even pumpkin recipes. Now think about this. Every day, millions of people across the globe log into Pinterest, and they might have different types of devices. They might experience various types of network conditions. That translates to millions of authentication events. You can imagine how imperative it is for us to keep the user authentication both smooth and secure. As we delve into today's main topic, social authentication, let me introduce how we integrate social authentication into our platform. We provide the user the option to sign up using the other social accounts. We employ federated sign-in for returning users. And as this animation shows here, for those people who already signed up using email and password, we also provide them an option to connect their accounts to the other social accounts that they already use regularly and trust. We have integrated social authentication to our platform because of its clear benefits for us. Initially, the primary motivation for us to adopt social authentication was to boost user engagement, as it simplifies the sign-up login processes, reduces frictions, and fosters a more engaging user experience. Later, as our focus shifted towards platform reliability and robust security, social authentication is no longer just about the ease of access to us anymore. We also leverage it as part of our solutions to enhance account security and identity protections. This change can also be seen in the change of our teams behind our authentication solutions. Originally, most of the authentication features were driven by the growth team. And later, we formed the identity team to focus on this area. And we have also been working on multi-factor authentications, magic links, account security, identity verifications, and more. And this team, since then, further developed, and now it emphasizes identity, user privacy, and compliance. As to our choices of those third-party providers, today we have Google, Facebook, Apple, and Line. Line is specifically to serve our users in Japan and selected Asian regions. Back in the early days, we also experimented with more providers, and now these 4 remain because their user base aligns pretty well with our audience. Also because they provide good technical support. That's one of the important factors we consider when evaluate and choose third parties. Now that we are discussing the benefits, it's a good time to look at some concrete numbers and examples which highlight the benefits of using social authentications for us. When it comes to user engagement, today federated sign-in, sign-on plays a crucial role in our platform. For example, the social logins accounted for over 30% of the total user logins, as the latest data shows. Turning to security enhancement, one example here is a password protection feature we rolled out in the past. It was designed to detect and alert the users who potentially have password leaks. And we urge them to either change their password or, better yet, utilize social authentication for added security. This feature was well received. At its launch, more than 30,000 people adopted such protection in a single day. With all those background and context, in the next 20 minutes, I will delve into the technical challenges, some of the best practices we adopted, as well as the lessons learned in the following 3 areas related to social authentication. Firstly, integration with third-party identity providers. Next, how we safeguard our users' identity data. And lastly, I will discuss the challenges posed by account takeover attacks on social platforms. Beginning with integration with third-party identity providers, here I want to walk through this quick example showing how a user signs up on Pinterest using their Facebook account. This illustration here maps out this process at the high level. When a user comes to Pinterest and they tap Continue with Facebook for a sign up, we initiate an OAuth exchange between the user, Pinterest clients, both mobile and web, and Facebook. With the user's authorization and consent, we obtain the basic profile data from Facebook and then send the request to our backend API, sign-up APIs to further process. Here in the backend, we emphasize on security. We process to detect spams, detect bots, identify any potential high-risk user activities, and we may also take certain actions to deal with user privacy and regulations. With all those security and privacy measures in place, the backend continues to create a user object and its data. Depending on the use case, we might do gradual authorization, promoting the user for any additional permissions needed from the third party. And eventually, once the user is successfully saved in our data store, the backend will issue access token, allowing the user to seamlessly interact with our platform. And that completes the whole sign-up process. With that example in mind, here are a couple of practices we have adopted to ensure successful integration with any third-party providers. The first one is to secure application-level credentials. During integration, we are provided with the app tokens, app keys by those providers, and those credentials that need to be used in a set of features in our product. And oftentimes, they need to be accessed by developers across the teams. Therefore, it's crucial for us to keep those credentials stored securely and manage their access. At Pinterest, we utilize our in-house system, Knox, to manage those keys. And we also have tools to continuously monitor and flag any potential risk linked to those managed keys. Moving on to the next one, protecting third-party API calls. This is important to us because our integration with third party isn't limited to the authentication process. As a social platform itself, sometimes our integration goes more in depth. We might invoke third party calls across our product surfaces. Therefore, we need to think about good ways to protect such API calls, especially those requiring the user tokens. And we started from the simplest one, yet effective, is that we audit all the integration, all the third-party calls usage, and their implementation. From there, we can deprecate those are no longer needed. And also double-check whether a token is indeed required in such APIs, because one common pitfall we saw was that the token was added because of misimplementation or redundancy. It's also something we need to pay attention to during code reviews. Specific to the integration with Facebook Graph API calls, to enhance its security, we added this app secret proof. This proof is generated using the application level token. And when the Graph API receives calls from us, it will validate this token and then verifies the caller's identity, and thus filtering out any inauthentic or spammy calls. Regarding to generating the proof, we also found that it's a better choice to generate the expiring proofs. They are short-lived, typically expire in 10 to 15 minutes, so that we will have less concerns about those proof itself getting leaked from logs or any other unexpected ways. One more thing we have learned was that how important it is to always conduct end-to-end testing in a production-like environment for any change in such integrations. Back to our example for adding the app secret proof. After we have done that, we tested in the backend, made sure no functional change, no performance change. But still, later, when we tested the whole user flow end-to-end, we discovered some issues. For instance, the proof wasn't compatible with certain SDK versions used in our clients, either mobile or web. Later, we had to do additional implementation change to resolve all those issues. All in all, it is much easier to find those unexpected issues and get them fixed early on if we have multiple layered testing in a production-like environment. The next thing I will touch upon is about third-party security assessment and security reviews. I don't know how many of you have the similar experience. Depending on the usage, we may get notifications from third party and requiring us to take certain security reviews and checks. Navigating those reviews can be cumbersome, and it may take more time than we originally thought, especially when multiple teams are involved. In that case, it could be ambiguous to determine who should be responding to which part in the review. So what we did and found to be useful was that as an identity team, we audit all those integration and its security implications as much as we can, have a comprehensive understanding overview of all those usage and our security measures, including those are not maintained by our team. And also have a plan to collaborate with other teams who also need to get involved in such reviews. Lastly, make sure to responding to those security checks timely. Lastly, regarding the developer access, we have a structured process to grant developers access when they work with those providers or development accounts. For example, we use a workflow integrated with Slack and Jira, and developers need to go through such a workflow to get their access or change the access. It also gives us the audit log to track back all those access changes. So now that wraps up the integration with third-party part. And from that discussion, you might have already noticed that when we address user authentication, especially social authentications, the user data, including third-party data, are also involved in the whole process. So that's why I think it's worth it to call out a couple of practices we have implemented to safeguard our users' identity data. We have a company-wide data classification and security policy. It provides us guidelines when dealing with any data from any source. We adhere to this policy when we handle our user data, which are typically categorized as restricted data or highly restricted data. We limit the access to user data following the least privilege principle. That means every access requires a formal review and approval. And also, the access is granted for a limited time without exceptions. On the other hand, in order to reduce the risk of our production user data getting compromised during development or testing, we delineate the data access between our production environment and the development environment. Developers, when they work on the feature work or testing, they can only access the development accounts. The other data access to user databases, S3 buckets, configurations, or any production data workflow jobs are all restricted. Regarding data retention policy, that's also important. We enforce the retentions using automated systems. And so when the user data is no longer necessary, they get deleted promptly. And that process is also backed up using the reviews and the notifications. Lastly, we utilize the data encryption methods to protect the data in transit and at rest, especially those sensitive information like password, pins, tokens, and any other PII data. So here comes the third area I want to address today. So let's switch the gears a bit. This is about account takeover attacks, ATOs. And we have seen the ATOs exhibit certain patterns on our platform. Much like the ATOs happening elsewhere, password breaches are a common root cause. In addition to that, on social platform, the attacks often target the high-value accounts. For instance, the more influential accounts or a creator accounts with a large number of followers. Such attacks often involve social engineering tactics and ransom demands. From our experience, we also observe that once an account becomes compromised on one social platform, it could be used to perpetrate ATOs on others as well through social authentication. And one straightforward example can be someone tries to log in Pinterest using a hijacked Google account, just as an example. And another scenario we learned was when the hackers they took over a creator's account. Maybe they utilized social engineering to achieve that. And then they connected that account to the other social account which they already have access. So in that way, later they can regain the access even if the original password has been updated, if there's no other security measures applied to that account, such as MFA. So as a result, this means to us is our ATO defenses must be comprehensive enough to be able to address all those possible scenarios. Talking about our protections against ATOs, first step starts from detection. To quickly detect the ATOs, we closely monitor metrics, especially those associated with user logins or signups. Alerts will be triggered once anomalies are detected, whether they be the sudden change in geolocations or unusual specs in the success or failure volumes, oftentimes they come simultaneously. In addition to detection, when we define against ATOs, we built a system called Guardian. Guardian is a dynamic rule engine system specifically designed to combat spams. It allows us to craft the rules checking against streams of events. It's also flexible to add those events. We can implement them in our backend or front end as needed. We can also define what actions to take when the rules are hit. So overall, this framework has been effective when we protect user accounts against threats. So our protection for user accounts happens in real time once suspicious activities are detected. And such protection exists in all the critical user flows. Here is just one example showing how our real-time protection works in the user login process. When user tries to log in, our backend invokes Guardian for verification. And Guardian then runs a series of rule checks based on our predefined rules for user protection, locking certain accounts, and so on. Once those results are returned, our backend then further process and then decide whether we can allow this login or decline it, or if there's any other immediate action we need to take. So in this case, we decide to protect this user's account, and then we're showing on the UI, telling the user about this activity, what happened, and suggest them the next step to take. We also send out email alerts to users and alert them with any potential security concerns. Okay, so to summarize our journey and the insights we have gathered, here is a list of lessons learned. For implementing the social authentication integration with third parties, it's important to implement an emergency switch, emergency shutdown for any third party that will be extremely useful for disaster recovery in cases when you have to handle any unexpected third-party outages or your integration issues. Secondly, secure the API calls, secure the credentials, and regularly update the integration parts and conduct security audits. Stay ahead of potential vulnerabilities with those proactive actions. For combating ATOs, it's important to make sure to implement strong protection against the social engineering and also guard against the ATOs from compromised social accounts. And don't forget, authentication is the start. User privacy and data security are equally important. That's something we bear in mind to keep our platform secure and trustable. That's everything I have today. This is the first time Pinterest come to Authenticate. Our team have been working on the other area related to authentication, identity, and we are looking forward to come back and having another conversation with you all in the future. Thank you.
I think we have time for a question or two if anyone has one. Cool.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm with Moontide Agency, and from the user base that you have at Pinterest, have you noticed that adoption happens in certain demographics, and have you tried anything that is customized to get people to adopt your higher security, protocols based on potentially just the, aptitude they have or the willingness they have based on their demographic or age or, usage?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I can share some insights from our 2FA adoption that from our data analysis, we do see some correlations with geolocations and users' age group. And we are also trying to upsell that security functionalities in our product. But so far, I don't think this year becomes better than last year, but I don't think overall the adoption is a pretty high number. And also, we also noticed that there is still a high drop-off rate when the users start to try enabling their MFA, for example, but they didn't finish. That's also something we look at our design, maybe try to iterate on that to make it easier for people to have better security with their account.
All right, I think we're at time, but thank you so much that was a great presentation.